I'm Lorelai.
And I am Leah.
Welcome in I'm an Equestrian podcast. We founded this podcast 2 years ago, and today we are thrilled to release this very first episode in English. In this podcast, we chat with great equestrians and seek to better understand our sport. What is it to be a horseman? What does it cost? What do they dream of? We hope that each of our episodes will participate to strengthen your passion for horses and to empower you as a horse lover, a horse rider, and a person.
This episode was recorded in July during Chantilly Rolex 5-star show. In Chantilly, we had the infinite pleasure to meet the international showjumper Daniel Bluman. During this conversation of over 40 minutes, Daniel told us about his equestrian journey from Colombia, where he was born and started horse riding, to the United States, where he moved years later to settle down to build the foundation of his professional riding career, and finally to Europe, where he is now living and working several months a year. We all know about Daniel's amazing riding skills, but while recording this conversation, we also discovered a person whose strong and powerful core values help navigate through life, through failures and setbacks. We hope that you will like this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. If you do eventually like it, feel free to share it with all your friends. I Am an Equestrian is now going international. Help us build a wider community of horse lovers.
Today's episode is sponsored by Helite. Helite is a French-based company that has been offering individual airbag vests to protect riders from all disciplines for nearly 20 years. The company was founded in 2002 by Gérard Thévenot, a French engineer specialized in fluid mechanics and passionate about light aeronautics, such as microlights, hang gliders, and paramotors. This is while practicing his passion that Gérard Thévenot quickly made this observation. The accident rate is still far too high. Because he is convinced that a good protection equipment can help an athlete to practice his activity more serenely, to enjoy, perform, and surpass himself, he imagined a range of airbag vests adaptable to all activities with a high risk. From the start, Helite has built its development and research strategy on a crazy bet to make the world safer by developing new intelligent solutions to protect and accompany people in their sports and daily practices. By focusing exclusively on the development of personal protection and equipment, the company has gradually become an expert in the sector. Their airbag vests are used in a wide range of activities and sports such as motorcycling, horseback riding, cycling, health, aeronautics, industrial work, and they are of course very popular in high-level sports. What we like about Helite, their airbag vests are 100% made in France and manufactured with high performance and comfortable fabric materials. They offer a complete protection of the vital zones before the impact on the ground: cervical, back, pelvis, sacrum, and thorax, thanks to an ultra-fast inflation. From the idea to the design of an airbag, a long process and many skills are involved, and their technology is always eventually validated after numerous prototypes and crash tests. Let's do it. You're listening to I'm an Equestrian podcast, and today our guest is Daniel Bluman.
Daniel, as a horseman, is very gentle in the stables. He's always putting the horses first. Definitely never pushes the horse past their limit. When the horse does something right, he's the first to recognize that and appreciate when they do it correctly. He's always very patient and understanding. He is truly in love with his horses. When you walk into the stable and they hear his voice, they're all pawing and whinnying for him because he gives more treats than is ever necessary. We go through about a bag of treats a day, like the big bags, 10 pounds or whatever, and carrots also. And they truly love him. He has a very special connection with his horses. As a sport rider, I think that he's very determined and acceptant of the flaws of the sport and the flaws in his riding or in his rounds, or, if the horse has a bad day. Of course, he takes time to get over, the bad rounds or the rounds that he wasn't hoping they went as they were supposed to. But 20 minutes later, he starts thinking about something else, thinking how he can make it better, how he can help the horse to be better, how he can better understand why the horse, didn't have the perfect round that he should have. And I think that's a really good quality in this sport, because I think if you're always expecting the horses to be perfect, you're going to get disappointed a lot, and then you end up, resenting your sport. I think you have to be patient with the horses, and like I said before, that's one of his best qualities in the barn.
Well, hi, Daniel. First of all, I'd like to tell you how grateful we are to be able to record this very first English-speaking episode with you. So we imagined I'm an Equestrian, this media, a little bit more than 2 years ago, and we released the very first episode with French rider Thierry Rosier. It was May 2019, I think. Today we meet in Chantilly, where you are competing the Rolex 5-star. And I'll try to introduce you very briefly, but then we will be looking forward to hearing you telling your story. That's the whole point of this media. We want to understand who you are and what has been your journey. So you were born in Colombia. You ride for Israel. You moved to the US when you were 10. And a couple of years later, actually some years later, you relocated to Belgium to train with Nico, Nelson Pessoa. Over the years, you participated to many World Cup finals, to 3 World Equestrian Games, to 2 Olympic Games. And, your equestrian track record really is astonishing, and yet you are no older than 31 years old. Daniel, I'd like to ask you a both very simple and very complex question. Who are you?
Well, thank you for having me here. First of all, I'm honored to be invited to be part of this episode. The question of who I am is always, I think, something that every human being is constantly asking. You ask yourself that all the time. But I would like to say that first and foremost, I'm a person that wants to be a good human being. I want to be able to live my life with integrity, with perseverance and always moving forward and not allowing adversity to get in the way of my goals. I really focus on that all the time, even before naming any big achievements that I would like to do in the sport, because I feel that at the end of the day, that's what really matters. That you stick to your principles and that you stick to your values, and everything else is just gonna be a cream on the cake, or whichever saying we want to say. But that being said, now when we get a little deeper into the sport, I am a horse lover. A very passionate equestrian. I really absolutely love with everything that I could possibly love our sport and the horses and the life with the horses. That is who I am. I am very lucky to be able to do this game or to do this sport in the highest level, because I am able to do it with the horses that I love and with the people around it that I love, my family and our close friends. So I think that pretty much describes who I am. I think I would also probably have to add that I am a very proud Jewish person, a very proud man of the heritage that I have, and I've tried to incorporate that into the sport. Because I believe it's important to represent my culture in a way that reflects unity and love and acceptance of religion, of sex orientation, of color, or everything. So I feel that has really become part of my life in the last few years, after seeing so much fighting and arguing about religion and race and color. And so I think those are the 3 pillars of who I am.
You just said you are a horse lover, and I watched a former interview you gave a couple of years ago to French TV Equidia. During this interview, you said something that really caught my attention. You said, "I am working hard to become a better horseman." What is it for you to be a horseman?
Yeah, I believe that being a good athlete in the horse business or in the horse sport is not that difficult. I believe that there's many out there that could be successful in the ring and could win any given day, a Grand Prix here, a Grand Prix there. But I feel that what is really difficult and what I thrive to be is to be an excellent horseman, and through that be able to become very competitive and successful in the ring. A horseman is a person that enjoys the life with the horses. A person that understands the horses, that understands how horses interact, how horses live, what they need, what they don't need, what they want, what they don't want. And a horseman, most importantly, is a person that will always put the horse before the personal ambitions.
I know you won your first championships when you were just a kid, and I wanted to ask you, did you take at some point in your life your future as a professional rider, as a successful rider, for granted, or did you have to fight for it? Did you have to build your own career?
Yeah, well, for granted, I never took it. That's definitely not part of my story. I've worked really hard from a young age, to understand the sport, to understand the industry, and to understand the life around the horses. My family don't come from horses. We are first generation of horse people or horsemen or equestrians, to put it that way. And I've had to learn the only way that you can learn, which is making a lot of mistakes, living through many different experiences. And luckily for me, being able to be next to great horsemen and great champions of our sport. But I had some success at my earlier years, but success is very relative. I won a few things, I think here, I think there, but from there to where we are now, and from where we are now to where I would like to be, there is a lot of work and a lot of years left of perseverance, as I said, of resilience, of keep working on. I believe that to be the best that you can be in what we do, there is just a lot of experiences that need to be collected. And I have yet a lot of them to be collected so that I can get to my prime in our sport.
Is there any magic recipe that can bring a young and passionate rider to compete to no less than 2 Olympic Games before his 30s?
Yeah, I think about that actually quite a little bit also. I have to say that, there's not really a magic recipe or a single piece of advice that I could give anybody. The one thing that I would like to say is that, first of all, I am, and I was especially then, a huge dreamer. I had big dreams. I was young. I was full of motivation to achieve those dreams, convinced that I would be able to. And most importantly, I'm a person that knows how to make changes really quickly. I don't make decisions, I never did, based on what I said the day before or the week before. I am always constantly learning and constantly changing, and that allowed me to adapt to different situations quite fast. Of course, if you're talking about the 2 Olympic Games, it has a name, Sancha, the mare that I had that started my career really on the highest level, I think was the breakthrough. She was the vehicle that allowed me to get myself into the big competitions, into the Olympic Games and into everything else. And through those experiences, I was able to really get more knowledge and more experiences, which at the end of the day is the most important thing that you need to be able to have regardless of age. Yes, I am 31 and it seems like I am very young, but I have had the opportunities to have and collect a lot of experiences. So maybe the age is young, but when you really look at everything that happened, it started on a very early age for me. It's going to be already 10 years since I first came to Europe. So that's a long time. It's a decade of doing nothing else but horses and trying to absorb all the information around me. And I feel that if you're a young person and you want to be in our sport and your dreams, our goals are to compete in the highest level, you have to just be ready to be super patient. You need to love the horses. You need to put the horses before anything else, and you just need to patiently wait for your time. The sport is long. The race is very long. To me, it happened very early. and I'm not a patient person, and I understand that if it would have taken 20 years, I would have gotten very impatient and probably sad at moments and frustrated. But I am completely sure that if you stay in the right path, sooner or later, you're going to get an opportunity.
You're talking about the experiences that shaped your life and have you become the person and the rider you are today. Can you tell us a little bit about the steps that happened in your life from your first championships when you were still in Colombia to who you are now? I know that you have lived in the US. I know that you have relocated then to Belgium. Can you just tell us a little bit about the timeline, of your career?
Sure. Well, I was born in Colombia. At age 10, my family moved to South Florida, where I had the opportunity to live 45 minutes away from Wellington. So I was constantly going to Wellington to watch the winter circuit, which is a very big circuit in North America. So I had the chance to see the greatest names in North American sport, and some Europeans compete there. So that pretty much was my first being exposed to the sport of highest level, which I really, really love. I really liked it. I'm a big fan of our sport, always was. At age 14, I went to the children finals, the FEI World Championships for children, and I won. So that sort of opened the possibility of doing some more. I got an invitation to the German Friendships that were to happen the year after, which is a great initiative that happens here every year with Lars Meyer Subexten in his place in Germany. And then through that, I had to go back to Colombia. I was living back in Colombia. I finished school really in Colombia. My family relocated back to Colombia again. And when I was 17, I just decided to go back to America because I really understood the American system, and I had made some contacts and connections through the years that I was there. So I went back there and started my career as a professional, but I always knew that in order to make it the whole way, I had to relocate eventually to Europe. I was very, very lucky that during the times of the beginning of Sanchez's career, Eric Lamas helped me, gave me a hand, and brought me to Europe for the first time, helped me through my first 5-star win and the Olympic Games. And then once I came here to Belgium with him, I got to see what was happening in Europe, and it was humbling. It was a completely different experience. And the year after that, 2013, I relocated to spend 9 months of the year in Belgium. I was living in Waterloo, very close to Nelson Pessoa. Actually, I lived at Neco's place for 2 months. It was an unbelievable experience, and through that became just pretty much the rebirth of my sport. Learning the sport all over again from the beginning, from the basics. And and since then, I've just kept working and kept developing young horses, which became really the roots of my sport. Most of the horses, or all of the horses that I've competed internationally, are horses that were developed by us since they were young. Yeah, here we are. I've had the chance since then to work with other great professionals, with other great horsemen, and it's a never-ending quest of learning, of knowledge, of trying to get the most you can, because all the time the best existing horsemen in our sport are getting better themselves. So we're always playing catch up, hopefully to be able to eventually be almost as good as them, so that at any given point we would be considered, one of the best competitors in the tour.
You just talked about Eric Lamas, and in another media, in Street for Life, you expressed your admiration for Eric. Can you tell us about him, about the reason why he's such an inspiration for you?
Yeah, when I was sort of in my later teens, my 16, 17, 18, 19, it was the time of Lamas with the Hickstead. And I've watched many combinations jump in my life, a lot of rounds. But the rounds with Hickstead Eric and Hickstead were just magical. That was just amazing. So I was a fan. I was a big fan of that combination and the energy that Eric had when he went in the ring, and he was contagious. And I was able to get close to him, and we became friends. And Eric is a winner. Eric is a guy that lives his life every day to the maximum, and I was able to learn a lot from that. It's a philosophy of life and a philosophy of riding that is different, but it works. And like I said, his energy and his passion is contagious. So I really like that.
Well, now that we have talked about Eric, there's obviously a second person we wanted to hear you talk about, and this is Neko. You already mentioned him, actually. So Nelson Pessoa, can you explain a little bit why did you decide at first to train with him, and what is now the feedback that you can share years after starting training with Neko?
Well, Neko, first and foremost, he's a legend and an idol for all of us that were born in South America. You know, like what him and Rodrigo did in the late 90s and beginning of 2000, plus everything that Neko himself had already done before, is historic. You know, like it was... I cannot even tell you. I mean, the pictures of them were in our doors, you know, in our house, in our lockers, you know, everywhere. This is a massive inspiration. And then to have been able to get to know him a few years later and interact with him was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it when he worked for the Colombian team for a little while. And then actually Neko called me himself. It was the 1st of January of 2013. It was very late for me in Colombia. I was with my family, and for him it was early in the morning in Belgium. And he said, "Daniel, why don't you come and train? You know, why don't you come and live with me and train and we'll do some good things together." And I was honored to get that phone call, and first of all grateful even for the opportunity. And I told him right away that yes, that I would do anything that I had to do to make that happen. And I did. And like I said, it completely changed my sport. You know, first of all, Neko comes with a history or a story that is similar to mine. His parents were not really professional horsemen, you know, and he left everything in Brazil to come to Europe to learn. Pure love and passion for the horses. He loves the horses, and I love the horses too. So we were already started the same way. Second, he is a very curious person, and so am I. You know, so we were able to have long discussions about hundreds of questions that I had, and he was very nice to answer them all. I mean, you got to understand that I didn't know anything. You know, when I mean nothing is nothing. I did things because people said you had to do things, but I didn't actually know why we were even doing those things. Neko explained me everything. Why not, how, when things were invented, when was the first time that this bit was ever used, when was the first time that back boots were ever used, when was the first time that a horse jumped with a hackamore. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of conversation. And it shaped my career, and most importantly, it showed me the type of sport that I wanted to do, which was a sport with the horses. You know, I wanted to be able to end my career and people be able to think about what I did and the horses that I rode. I didn't want to be one rider that ended up, you know, that I was the main character of the story and the horses second, third, you know, they were not really as important now. You know, when I'm done with this sport, hopefully many years from now, I'm pretty sure that the people are going to be able to name 5 or 6 horses that really mark my career. You know, and that's how we went with Neko, you know, and his horses jumped until they were old, you know, like they were 17, 18, you know, they retired as old horses, and that's what I want for me as well, you know, because I really established a strong connection with my horses, and I spent a lot of days and years producing them, and I feel that the only way that I can explain in my mind that this is worth it is if once I get the horses to a level that they need to be, I can extend their career for a long time. You know, I don't imagine just working the way I work with the horses to just use them for a year or two and then goodbye. You know, like it just doesn't go. I spend so much time and so much emotions and like all the means that I have and with the team that I have behind me and everything, that I just feel that the horses become part of us. So I figured that was the way Neko did it, and I wanted to do it the same way.
You just said that, well, you know, when you were at first in the US, you were already very successful, performant in sports, and you said that you knew that you would have to relocate to Europe, that for the future of your career, it would be something very important, significant. How did you know, how is Europe so different from the American system, and why was it to you so important to move to Europe, to keep improving, to keep moving forward in the way you were riding and in your career?
Well, it's very simple. The philosophy in Europe is to produce, and the philosophy in America is to use. So in Europe you produce horses, and in America you use horses. So in my situation and the way I wanted to do sport, and especially with the financial backing that I had, there was no other possibility to do the big sport if I was not producing horses. And if I was going to produce horses, I had to produce them in Europe. So I relocated to Europe for that purpose, to learn how to produce horses, to get a young horse, to teach it, to do the cycle, to go make it from 5 to 6, from 6 to 7, from 7, to do the whole entire career of the horse. And that's what I did. I have to say that my very, very good friend, Camilo Robaggio, who I grew up with, he doesn't get any recognition for all of these things that we've done together, but we did it together. Camilo and I grew up together in Colombia, and he loved the horses the way I did and was passionate about it the way I did. And when I decided to relocate to Europe, I called him and I said, "You're coming. This is what we're going to do." And he did. And he lives here. He's lived here already for like 80 years. And he is the man in charge of our entire operation of young horses. And without that operation, there wouldn't be sport for me. But yeah, that being said, Europe gave us the possibility of learning how to produce.
So you spent half of your time over there in Florida during winter, basically, and the rest of the year you live here in Europe. Would you say that both systems are so much different? How can you explain that?
Well, the situation has changed, and it constantly changes for me in particular. Like when I first came to Europe, I was spending 9 months of the year in Europe and 3 months in America, because I was starting the young horse operation. I was learning how to select them, how to train them. So I had to spend a lot of time here with Camilo. Nowadays things have changed a little bit for me, because now I have a family, I have kids, I'm married. So things have changed. But so I spent like the 3.5 months in Florida. We have a place also now in New York, so then I spend some time in New York, but when I'm in New York I travel a lot to Europe. It's an easy flight from New York to Europe, and that's how I spend the rest of the year until I go to Florida, being in Europe and being in New York, traveling a little bit back and forth. But for me, that was the way they worked, because my owners are American, or they live in America. My wife is American. I know America and the system very well, so for my business it's very important to be present in America. Yet in Europe I have the production of horses. I never had a European sponsor, client or anything. I think it's obvious that there's plenty of European riders that are looking for opportunity. What the chances that the Colombian or Israeli boy get those horses is highly unlikely. And I know it, and I think it's normal. So I knew that I had to create a structure where I had a business that could support and pay for the organization in Europe that was producing the young horses that eventually would be for sport for myself, and the ones that not necessarily make it for sport, or like right now that we have plenty, some of them become for sale. So it's a circle. The North America and Europe work together. They're completely different systems. I'm lucky to know both systems very, very, very well, and to be able to adjust and to make decisions depending on the moment of every horse, and depending on the moment of the sport, or the moment that I am going through, whether I have to spend time in Europe or spend time in America. I feel that that's a privilege, and I feel that makes me stronger and more competitive, because I have extreme flexibility to be able to be in any of the two places at any given time, and be ready to perform in any of the two places.
There's some topic that you just talked about, and we have talked about it just a little bit earlier with Jérôme Guéry. You mentioned that the fact that you now have a wife and kids have changed a little bit your organization, your structure. And this is something I wanted to ask you, because we know how time-consuming is this sport. How do you manage to find a balance between your family life, between spending time with your wife and kids, and also performing and being there for every key international competitions, championships? How do you do?
Look, it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but you have to have your priorities straight. And for me, my priorities are very clear. The moment I decided to have kids, I was having kids, and I was going to raise my kids. They were not going to have an absent father that was in a horse show every week and that was leaving 5 days a week to compete. So based on that, I've made a schedule where I am sure to be there with them a lot. I do travel, I do horse shows, but I maybe don't do as much as some of the riders do. The kids are young. Maybe in the future, when they're older, things are going to change. But that's what it is right now. For me, family is extremely important. Our sport is very time-consuming, but it's also very mentally consuming and emotionally consuming. And if you don't keep a balance, it will take a toll on you. You're going to get older, and at some point you're going to look around and you're going to start saying, yeah, I have all these Grand Prix wins and all these things, but I don't have nothing else. And that's not going to happen to me. I had clear what I wanted. Also, I started to identify competitions and events that are really important for me, and those I never miss. I work towards those events. Aachen, Geneva, Calgary, Den Bosch. Now Rolex has added more horse shows, and I love the Rolex horse shows. I mean, we have Chantilly, Dinard. Then you have I was able to go for the first time last week to Windsor, and then you have some shows in America that are important for me, like the Hampton Classic, or there's events that are important for me in my calendar, and I just really circle them from the beginning of the year, and I work towards that. And every other week, every other show, even if it's a 5-star or whatever it is, for me it's just not that important. Like the championships, of course, always important, and Olympics and things like that, but many of the other 5-stars just became sort of not that important for me, so I work around that. And when you really put that on a calendar, there's not so many weeks that are very, very, very important. And for the weeks that are not very, very important, I just pick horse shows that are close to home so that I can be with my kids and still be with the horses and do what I do.
I just want to talk about your performances. Were you prepared to handle so much pressure, so much success, so young? How did you feel before, during and after London and Rio Olympic Games?
Well, first of all, I've never been the type of guy that has felt that I'm so successful or that I have the, because I'm always looking up. I'm never looking back. And I've never been in the top. So I've never been able to really feel what it is to be so successful, because I've always been chasing the very successful ones, and that didn't include me. So I never felt like that. And for that same reason, I never felt that type of pressure. The pressure that I feel is with myself, the pressure of trying to perform, the pressure of getting good results. I'm a competitive person, I want to do well. For London, it was just very special. I was living in a bubble. I was training with Lamas. I was 21, 22 years old, riding a very, very special mare, just a really different type of horse with Sancha, and I just rode the wave, like they say in America. I just went with it. I was just doing everything Eric said I had to do. I was enjoying it. I trusted my horse 100%, and London was magical. When you look at the videos still today, when I look my rounds in London, they were incredible. But I wasn't thinking, I was just doing, and I had the help of the number one rider in the world at the time and Olympic champion at the time. So I was on a cloud. I was living my dream. After that, things changed a lot. The next few years were very difficult. I still got to get some good results and still got to qualify again for Rio. But my life was different then. I was seeing the real reality of the sport and how difficult it was. And I had actually a bad injury for Sancha just weeks before the Olympic Games of Rio. So I ended up going with a party that was a little bit green and perhaps unprepared for that type of event, and it didn't go our way. But you know what? It also taught me how fragile horses and the career is. Sancha was a really, really strong horse, and I maybe never imagined how strong she was compared to other horses. Sancha went as an 8-year-old to the Pan American Games. As a 9-year-old, she went to Olympic Games. She won a 5-star Grand Prix as a 9-year-old. I mean, she did so much that I almost imagined that every horse was going to be like that, but I was wrong. That was Sancha. But yeah, it's been a process. We keep working. Like I said, never looking back, always looking forward to producing more great horses and to keep the great ones that we currently have doing the sport for a long time and just enjoying it. We'll see what other achievements we're able to get through my career, but that's not really what's most important for me.
So we are going to talk about the present day. So you were qualified for Tokyo, and you happened to be unable to go for some legal reason, I'd say, some conflict with the FEI rules. What's your feeling today after such a setback? Are you already looking forward the next championship, the next Olympic Games, or are you thinking about it? What's your state of mind today?
No, I'm perfectly fine. I'm thinking about the next thing. Look, I did everything I could. I was part of the team that qualified Israel for the Olympic Games. Tokyo was a big deal for us. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. I put a lot of energy and a lot of time into our team and Tokyo. But it wasn't meant to be for me. There was a registration issue in the passport of Gema. Adriano was just coming back from injury, so I wasn't going to push him to be in Tokyo. For me, horse, like I said, horse always comes first, everything else comes second. And I fought until the end. I tried to use all the tools that we had. Unfortunately, the FEI legal department had a different vision and a different position than the one I had. Who knows, maybe for the best. Maybe simply I was just not supposed to be in Tokyo. And that's it, and that's how I take it now. And I honestly do not think about it. I'm cheering my team. I'm a fan of the sport, as I said. I'm a fan of Team Israel, so I will be cheering them and sending them my best energy. But for my career, I'm already way past that. I'm thinking on the horses that I have right now, on continuing Adriano's rehab, on competing on other competitions that I have to compete. And sure, Paris is in 3 years. That's still a long way, but we have the World Equestrian Games coming soon. And again, the Rolex Grand Slams, for me, are everything. It's really what I work for every year. So yeah, focus on that. And like I said, I'm a guy that knows how to adapt very, very, very quickly to situations. So I had received the notification that I wasn't going to be going, and I was already working on the plan that I was going to do, since I was not going to be part of the team in Tokyo. So we move forward.
I think we are soon at the end of this interview, and I just want to ask you something. What are your dreams now, Daniel? What will be your next challenge?
No, like I said from the beginning, my challenge is to be able to keep a balance between, the three pillars that I told you earlier, of living the way that I think I should live my life, of being the type of horseman that I want to be, and that I represent my values and my culture the way that it should be represented. Those are my goals. If you want to put that into equestrian context, and say that I would like to be a world champion, absolutely. Would I want to be an Olympic champion? 100%. Winning the Rolex Grand Slams. I mean, that's what I work for. But I don't know if that's what's going to happen. It's out of my control. I can only control what I can control, and I work towards developing the best horses that I can develop, and to becoming the best horseman and best rider that I can. And through that process, maybe I'll end up winning some of the things that everyone wants to win. But more importantly, I just hope that I can stick to my way and to my journey and see what the result will be.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I think we're done. We really, really hope to see you in Paris 2024. And back today, we just wish you good luck for tonight and the main competition here in Chantilly.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You just listened to I'm an Equestrian podcast with Daniel Bluman. This episode was the 56th episode we recorded for I'm an Equestrian, but also the first one in English. If you want to help us build a wider community of international horse lovers, do not forget to share and send this podcast to all your friends. If you liked it, if you enjoyed listening to this very unique story, send us a private message on Facebook or Instagram with your thoughts and feedback. 2 weeks from now, we will release a new episode in French, and about the next episode in English, you're gonna have to wait a month. See you soon!